Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Friday, May 21st. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Minnesota game is in 104 days. The game against Michigan in 190 days. A lot of days we do shows about content that's exclusive to Buckeye Scoop members. And just to give you a sense for why you should consider joining the site, and you should, buckeyescoop.com. There's the plug. Today, though, I wanted to do something different. We wanted to highlight some of the great free content of the site that anyone can read, whether you're a member or not. So Tony Gerdeman is writing a really interesting series featuring a different Ohio State football player every day right now, looking at where they stand, what a realistic ceiling is for this year and beyond. This week, it's covered everyone from Garrett Wilson to Craig Young, Paris Johnson to Ty Hamilton. So, Tony, what is it that made you want to write these?
Well, it's two parts, really. Being in this industry during the summer, you need stuff to write about. As Urban Meyer always said, you have to feed the beast. And so that's important. You got to give people something to read. But also, when you do this, and you can focus on a handful of guys. Ohio State has 85 scholarship players on average, give or take here and there. And yet maybe a third of those guys really get focused on. And so this is an opportunity to really write about every single scholarship player on the roster from, I think I started it on May 2nd, and it'll finish sometime in late July, and just one piece on every single scholarship player, give everybody a little bit of shine, and also some background, some anticipatory things like what could they do this year and what could they do beyond. Just a snapshot of basically every single player on the team, every single scholarship player on the team, maybe a couple of walk-ons as we go.
So, you're doing this to put a little shine on everyone. We're going to start with a little-known wide receiver by the name of Garrett Wilson. First of all, you wrote about the story. First of all, of the first time Ryan Day saw Garrett Wilson. I feel like that's one we've probably told before on a podcast at some point, but it is a really good story. And I think probably a lot of people maybe don't know it or don't remember it. So go ahead and share that story.
Yeah, and that's also another reason why I wanted to do this series, is because I think we sometimes forget the beginnings of a lot of these guys. And the beginning of Garrett Wilson was Ryan Day going to Lake Travis High School in Austin, Texas to see quarterback Matt Baldwin throw. They were looking for a quarterback. And, so he's watching Matt Baldwin throw, and off in the distance, he sees a wide receiver blocking a defender off the field and into a tree. Ryan Day asks an assistant coach, "Hey, who's that guy?" And the coach is like, "That's Garrett Wilson." And so that was the first picture, the first impression, I guess you will, of Garrett Wilson. And it was quite an impression. And, later on he gets an offer and eventually commits and, shows up at Ohio State ready to roll as a true freshman right out of the gate.
So here's a fun question that you could go any number of directions with, and you did in your article. What is the ceiling for Garrett Wilson this season?
And I actually did a couple of different things there, because basically if you look at what he did last year and just prorate that over, say, I even went just 14 games conservatively, you're looking at, say, 6 catches a game over 14 games. What's that? 80, somewhere between 70 and 90 catches. And then he averages 15.8 yards per catch in his career. And so you're looking at, somewhere between, around 1,200 yards, something like that. But that's what he should do. The ceiling of what he could do is he could break Paris Campbell's record of 90 catches. He could break David Boston's record of over 1,400 yards receiving. But I think there's two different things we're looking at. There's like he should catch 70 balls and 1,100, 1,200 yards. What he could do, though, and if we're talking about the ceiling, that's it could be a record-breaking season on a number of fronts, even with the fact that you've got Chris Olave on the other side.
We'll fill people in on who Chris Olave is maybe in a later show. There's a lot of guys to go through. One of them this week that you went through was Craig Young. You called your article about Craig Young. Here's the headline: Craig Young could be the Buckeyes' secret weapon this year. So, okay, why could Craig Young be the Buckeyes' secret weapon this year?
Well, Tom, it's a secret. But the thing about Craig Young playing that bullet position is he can do a lot of different things. We saw him lining up in the spring, kind of behind the linebackers a little bit, but in front of the safeties. That could be one place you see him. Another time you can see him, he can line up almost as a rush end and come off the edge, or be run support as a strong side backer, and could also drop back as a second safety and do all of these different things. And he's going to be a guy that quarterbacks have to look for, allows Ohio State to do a lot of different things with in terms of their coverage disguises, and you don't have to substitute as much. So you don't really tip your hand to the offense with what you're doing when you've got a guy that can do a lot of different things and a defense that can do a lot of different things with him. And so that's one of the reasons I think he could be really instrumental. And I go back to the way Michigan used it with Greg Madison, where he was in the backfield blitzing a lot, but I also think maybe that was some of Don Brown's, like, we like to blitz. Whereas Ohio State didn't really do that much with Pete Werner, certainly didn't do that with Brendan White when he was doing it, didn't really use the position last year. So maybe not as aggressive, but still a guy who can do many different things. I'll be interested to see if they do get more aggressive with it now that it becomes like its own thing.
And next guy I wanted to ask about was Paris Johnson. He is someone who came to Ohio State with just immense hype. And was a contributor as a true freshman on what was already a very talented offensive line. And that is something you really don't see usually with true freshman offensive linemen. He's expected to potentially be a starter this fall. So what is the ceiling for him this year? And then next season, when potentially one or both of the Ohio State tackles leave, what's the ceiling for him then?
Yeah, I think the ceiling for him this year is like an all Big Ten type of player. I don't think he'll be there against, say, Oregon, but by the time you get into week 8, week 9, week 10, you're no longer a rookie at this point, or a first-time starter. And so I think there'll be some growing pains, maybe a little bit, but then he's going to be just fine by the end of the season. I don't think anybody expects any real struggles. Of course, many of the same things were said about Harry Miller last year, but again, last year was a season played during a pandemic. So let's not go too critical on players based on what we saw last year. But Paris Johnson, I think this year will be the kind of guard that can do a lot of things, and is also a very good pass blocker against what we see with the 3 techniques that he'll be facing. A lot of those guys are former defensive ends, so that comes in handy. But also just a mobile run blocker as well. And then next year, you would expect him to just slide right over to, or slide all the way over, basically, to left tackle from his right guard spot. And the only question then is he a 1-year starter at left tackle before he goes to the NFL, or will he stick around for another year of seasoning? But even as he said this spring, he didn't view the move to a guard as a bad thing. He's going to show the NFL that he's versatile and capable of doing different things. He thinks it will add to his value.
Yeah, and he is someone who, could very well be. You don't see very many 3-year offensive linemen head into the NFL. He's someone who it's like, that's actually a conversation that might have to happen at some point. And does he want to do that or not? Another guy who was a true freshman who made an impact and played in the playoff last season, just like Paris Johnson did, was Jackson Smith-Njigba. He is someone who that you and I have been, I'm just going to say, insanely high on basically from day one. So what does his ceiling look like for this year and beyond?
And I've written about this, and I think we've talked about it before in the past. Since Urban Meyer arrived in 2012, Ohio State's starting slot receivers average 57 receptions a year. That's where Jackson Smith-Njigba is right now. He's Ohio State's starting slot receiver. So does he get those 57 receptions? I think that's going to be tough with Chris Olave, whom we'll eventually talk about one day, and then Garrett Wilson. Outside of him bracketing him, I don't know that there's 57 receptions available for him. But next year, if he's in the slot again or wherever he is, he's going to be capable of putting up insane numbers. I think last year I said if he stayed 4 years, he would leave as Ohio State's all-time receptions leader. I don't know that those 4 years are going to happen, but if they do, I still stand by that. I think he's going to put up some. I don't know what is the ceiling this year. I think maybe the 57 receptions, but because that's going to be difficult to get to. But he's certainly capable, more than capable. It's just the problem is there's only one football, and but this year, what are we talking, like maybe 45, 50 catches, 700-800 yards, 8-10 touchdowns. I don't think that's outrageous.
Maybe 3-4 SportsCenter top 10 catches during the course of the year. Yeah, boy. So you've given 80 catches to Garrett Wilson, 40 catches to 50 catches to Jackson Smith-Njigba. I hope Chris Olave, I hope they can find him every once in a while. That I'm sure he won't be completely forgotten this year. The last guy I wanted to talk about was Lathan Ransom. He was yet another guy who was a true freshman last year, who then worked his way into a pretty big role in that offense and the defense. He is something of a positional battle right now. Where is he? Where is he going to be competing, and who is he going up against? And then if he wins that battle, like what would he actually bring to the defense?
Yeah, right now it's him and Marcus Williamson battling out in that cover safety spot, the position formerly known as the slot corner, and Cameron Martinez, the redshirt freshman, in there as well. So it's those three. Lathan Ransom, the potential for based on the way the coaches have talked about him ever since he arrived, and the way Ryan Day has talked about him, you feel like they really, really like him and they want him on the field. But I don't think it's just a lock and a done thing that he's going to be starting in front of Marcus Williamson. Marcus Williamson had his ups and downs last year, but talked in the spring about how he's learned from those and from those mistakes and those issues and will be better for it this year. Will he be better than Lathan Ransom? We'll see. It's a position that requires a talented cover guy, and Lathan Ransom came to Ohio State as maybe a deep safety, or that's maybe what people thought, but Ohio State likes him in that slot position, and it says a lot that they think he can do it, and he did it pretty well last year when given small opportunities. So if he wins the job, he's a bigger guy than Marcus Williamson, so it helps out against the run that way. And then also it can just as easily drop back and provide a split safety look and be comfortable doing that as well.
Right. You are doing this series every day, so I'm going to put you on the spot and ask. We don't do the show live, so we're not actually getting up at 5 a.m. on Friday to do this show. So by the time the show is out on Friday morning, who is going to be the latest guy in your series to be featured?
Well, I'm glad you're asking me that, as my neighbor is mowing right next to the window here.
a podcast tradition like no other.
So who is it going to be on Friday? Let me say, how about Jeremy Ruckert?
Jeremy, that's great. That's a good one.
I don't know if anybody has ever heard of him.
Yeah, another little known player that you're featuring. This is great work you're doing, plumbing the depths of the Ohio State roster to find players such as Garrett Wilson and Jeremy Ruckert. Yes,
giving guys who have not been talked about an opportunity to be talked about, shining a little light on the guys stuck out in the shadows and in the corners.
All right, and before I let you go, and to give your neighbor's mower a little bit more time on air, we should talk for just a minute about the new assistant coach that Chris Holtman is hiring, Tony Skinn. He's replacing a departed coach on the assistant coach for the Ohio State basketball team. So do you have a sense for what Tony Skinn will be doing for the Buckeyes, and just give people a little bit of a background on who he is?
Yeah, he's came from Seton Hall, is an East Coast guy. Also spent some time at Louisiana Tech before Seton Hall. He was at Seton Hall for a couple of years. Has a recruiting footprint out east now, which will help Ohio State. Terry Johnson was Ohio State's facto defensive coordinator. That will now go to Jake Diebler, and Tony Skinn will help with the recruiting aspect and just the overall assistant duties. So that's going to help the recruiting efforts for Ohio State, which have been going pretty well. I know everybody's like, well, do they have a 6'10" guy yet? Do they have a 7-footer yet? Not everybody can. These are unicorns. They're hard to find, but the recruiting efforts will be, I think, improved. And Ohio State hasn't confirmed anything, at least by when we're recording this, but I would expect it to happen fairly soon.
All right, and you can find Tony's entire series at BuckeyeScoop.com. Again, that is all free content. You don't need to be a member. Just go check out the site, read that series. I'll put a link in the this podcast post on the front page of Buckeye Scoop as well, to the full list of his series. So it is I think worth your time, and it is an example of the fantastic content at BuckeyeScoop.com. There's a bunch of this is the free stuff. Absolutely check it out. But there's even more. There's much more on our Ask the Insiders board behind that paywall. If you want to become a member, this is a pretty good time. We are heading into probably the craziest month in the history of college football recruiting. And college football recruiting is already pretty bananas. So for this to be crazier than all of that, it's going to get pretty nuts. We have a fantastic team of insiders covering every angle of recruiting. We have Mark Givler, we have Bill Green, we have Mick Walker, we have Alex Gleitman, we get Dominic Smith down in Florida. We get people all over the country. Eyes, feet on the ground, boots on the ground, watching guys, talking to guys. keeping you updated on everything that we're hearing from Ohio State, everything we're hearing from players, every angle of this. It's all at BuckeyeScoop.com. We also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Hit the subscribe button there, just like those articles from Tony. It's all free. You don't have to pay anything. It's okay. You can just enjoy our free content. We appreciate your patronage there as well. It is youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. Hit that subscribe button, and then you'll get notified every time we post a new podcast, new interview, new player highlights, like whatever. It's all there. youtube.com/Buckeye Scoop. And last of all, check out all of our great podcasts. Tony and I have done a couple episodes of Buckeye Weekly this week, talking about some of the point spreads that came out for this season, and also some players, the true freshmen on Ohio State's offense. Like, what are they going to do this year? What's a realistic expectation for all of those guys, from Kyle McCord and Travion Henderson to Ben Chrisman and the offensive linemen? Like, we talked about every one of those guys. So you can find that's on the Buckeye Weekly podcast, but you can find that and all of our great podcasts by just searching Buckeye Scoop on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. You can subscribe to those shows right there and leave us a 5-star rating and review, which helps us out and helps other folks find those shows as well, which we greatly appreciate. That'll do it for today, and that will, in fact, do it for this week. Thank you guys for joining us. Have a great day. Talk to you on Monday.